love's got the questions, digging so sharp, peeling back layers, hitting the heart.
Yeah, well, welcome back to the show. So for people who didn't watch the first episode, they should go back and watch last time I had you on here, because we went through your whole background, all that, so we can skip a lot of that. But I remember one of the questions I asked last time I had you on was, hey, is this book ever going to get made into a movie? And at the time you said there was an issue with the writer's strike, and obviously that got settled, and now it's actually happening. It's exciting.
Yes, it's very exciting. Okay. Do you want me to talk about it for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, we could tell them the gist of it is obviously it's the New York Times bestseller, 1 Second After. And I think I just read that it's MPI Films with Scott Rogers is directing, and Michael Straczynski is writing it. And that's all I know. You may know more though.
Okay. Everything broke open about 3 or 4 months ago. When MPI, is it MPI? You know, I don't know myself at times. MPI production.
MPI Films, it says MPI Original Films in association with Startling Incorporated.
Yeah, Starling Incorporated. Okay, what happened? They acquired it. They have been trying to raise money to get the thing forward. You know, that movies are a fair chunk of change.
Mm-hmm.
That finally came together, and immediately, you know, it started forward. It got green lighted. Got the well, the producer was already involved. He was the one selling it, and we got the director, and the director came out here, late April, early May, and spent the day looking things over. And what I really liked about everybody involved in this is they're very dedicated to making a realistic movie about EMP. That's been their key motivation. I mean, EMP's been used in other films in the past. They always get it wrong. You know, we're going, you know, it's going to be EMP'd, and a half hour later, everything's back online or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So they're dedicated to that. Last month, the producer, the director, and my agent went out to Bulgaria. That's where they're going to be filming most of it, because Bulgaria is used a lot for films these days. Scouted out locations. I just received concept art just a couple of days back of how the town's going to be set up. It's all going forward. So right now they're talking about starting filming around September 15th. That's 6 weeks worth of filming, and then producing it and everything, and it will be out late in the spring or early summer of next year. So I'm freaked. I mean, I've waited 15 years for this to happen. I went through production hell and option hell. And, you know, in fact, I almost had it sold about 5 or 6 years ago. I was going to fly out to Montana to meet with the producer, and he was an amateur pilot, and he put a plane in the side of a mountain, and that ended that deal. That was terrible. He was a really good guy. And then it got picked up by somebody else. So here we are today, and I got a movie coming forward.
Yeah. Any idea who is going to star in it? Like,
I can't talk about that.
Okay. But you do know that there are some people being considered, or they already chose them, or?
Yeah, I already know different people being considered. There's non-disclosure on my part. I could talk about the generalities of production and all that, but
Okay.
all the details. They'll put that out in press releases and all the usual hoopla and everything else. You know how Hollywood is.
Sure. So how big is the budget for this? Like, is this going to be in the theaters, or is it going straight to streaming? Or
it's I can't talk about budget, but it is going into theaters. Again, late spring, early summer, and then from theaters, it will finally move over to Netflix, Amazon Prime, somebody like that, for TV production. Because you got a lot of movies, they come out, and then a couple months later, they put them out on internet as well.
Sure.
So all of it is, you know, like I've waited 15 years. I was for many years caught in option hell. Somebody would option it. In fact, M. Night Shyamalan optioned me at one point, and you know he had control for a year, and it didn't go forward from there. Um,
That's
and
crazy because he's made some really bad movies. You'd think that he,
yes,
like the last Airbender, that was terrible. This would have been way
yes,
better than what that was.
that was damned if I do, damned if I don't type of thing. Oh yeah, big name. He's of course famous for The Sixth Sense, but what has he done afterwards? So I wasn't too upset when the option dropped on that after a year.
Yeah. I mean, that would have been interesting to see. Yeah, because I feel like a lot of his problem now is like, yeah, he's out of ideas, but this is like the idea is handed to him on a plate and he just has to direct it and make it happen. So that's interesting.
You know, one of the worries I had was that somebody would come out with a similar production and get things wrong, and that would sort of like steal the thunder. Oh, a
Mm.
movie's been made on EMP. Yeah, a good example is like the movie Gladiator or whatever, completely ruined anybody in ancient history for the longest time. Or the really bad one was when 300 came out because Scott Peterson had written an incredible book about it called Gates of Fire, about the Battle of Thermopylae. Very, very accurate. Historians, we all loved it. And then 300 came out, and I walked out. I got about halfway through, and when the Spartans are marching off to war and all they're wearing is cod pieces, I couldn't take it anymore. All these ripped, right guys, and they're, yeah, we are the Spartans. And I finally said, guys, this looks like the San Francisco Brigade. It's not realistic at all. And I actually walked out. I was so angry.
Wow, that's
Scott,
interesting. Yeah, because I would definitely want to get to that, the history and stuff and the parallels with today. But in terms of movies, yeah, was there any scenes from 1 second after that were in the book that you felt like were essential to keep that in the film? Because I'm sure they have to cut some of those scenes because book and a movie
of
is
course.
unless it's going
Uh,
to be like a 4 hour movie.
yeah, we went through five versions of the screenplay.
Hmm.
And the first one was pretty good. The second or the third version, I was like, oh my God, don't let them do it. I'll go out and hang myself. And I shared my complaints with my producer. He agreed with me, so did my agent. And so we went back more to the original. Yeah, there's going to be scenes are compressed and things like that, but I'm really very, very happy on the whole thing. The key thing is EMP, when it hits, it's such a devastating blow to an infrastructure. It just simply doesn't recover. How do we live post EMP? That's what the book is about. How do we live post EMP? And the movie is really capturing that well.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting thing, and it's scary to think about that. Whether it's an EMP or some other thing that takes out the technology, if we just didn't have electricity, or even just, I feel like Wi-Fi. If we didn't have internet or something, how do people survive without Wi-Fi? Like, there's so many things that I do and that people do on Wi-Fi and internet. What do you do if you don't have it?
Well, I kind of lived through it last year. Helene, I live about 10 miles, 5 miles actually from where Helene hit the hardest. And over 100 people died there. It's like Texas, a bit like what happened in Texas on steroids. It just isn't one river, it's every river overflowed. I went without electricity for 6 weeks and internet as well. In fact, the guys who finally hooked me back up after 6 weeks were from Quebec. And we had some interesting conversations on what I remember of French, but that really showed me just how horrifying it is. I had nothing. I had no electricity, no internet. I ran out of water rather quickly and had to scrounge for water. Toilets don't work. Nothing works. It was 6 weeks, but the key thing is from day one, volunteers were coming in from all over the country to help out.
Hmm.
Uh, a bunch of guys organized helicopters. They had 75 helicopters, volunteers all ferrying supplies in and out. after 5 days, I was asked to take a helicopter flight down to Hickory, about 60 miles from here, to watch their operation. Well, what I saw was horrifying. Just devastation everywhere across a 50, 100-mile wide swath and 100, 150 miles across. For example, I used to own an antique airplane, an original World War II plane, a Warbird. That hangar was under 15 feet of water. Gone.
Wow.
This precious airplane I owned for 20 years, just gone. So I got a taste of what it would be like long term. But let me emphasize, I knew help was coming. Imagine a scenario where we all know no help is coming except for what we can do on our own. Learned a lot. And yes, my town really did pull together. We even had community meetings. I remember a friend was with me. I said, this is like straight out of the book. An outdoor meeting. What do we do? How do we handle this? Where can we get food, water, things like that? It was a very chilling time for me. And what's happened in Texas in this last week, my heart goes out to them because they particularly impacted children. All those children in that camp that were killed is horrifying.
Yeah, that is really scary. I mean, and that's with the movie. I mean, that's a big focus of the book is the townspeople and the characters and how people come together and how they would help. But yeah, with something so big, it's like they can only do so much, and then and then also you've got people that are not looking out for the best interest. And if there was a wide scale thing, are there gonna be more people who try to help, or more people who are trying to steal and pillage and things like that? So it definitely makes you wonder. I mean, it's great to see when a real life example happens and people swoop in to help. But yeah, if it was the whole thing went down, I don't know that there'd be as many people helping.
Yeah, it's not just you. And part of that as well is on 9/11. Uh, okay, let me ask, where were you on 9/11?
Oh, it's funny. It's a funny story actually. I was off break from college, and I remember sleeping in, and I woke up and I came down and my dad was like not happy. And he's a financial advisor, so I think, he's thinking of his clients and the market and all this and he's like, "Yeah, you're upstairs sleeping in." He's like, "The world's going to shit right now." And I was like,
Yep.
wow. And I just couldn't, it was just surreal watching that on TV. I was like, wait, I don't understand. What happened to plane? It just didn't make any sense to me because I never seen anything like it.
Yeah, uh, I was teaching a class when the first one hit. All right. Well, no, actually the second one hit.
Hmm.
And we gathered together as a college. We're a Christian college. We met in the chapel. We had a prayer service for people and such. But here's the key thing. In that first hour, Giuliani was on television saying, this is what's happening to us. We're going to pull together. We're New Yorkers. Let's all work together. And they really did. Remember, 1 million people are just walking home, no looting or anything like that, because a voice that we trusted was out there. But imagine instead that with an EMP, it hits and then all communication nationwide stops. You don't know what the hell happened,
Yeah.
and most of us, when we get a power failure, we figure, oh, okay, it'll be back in a couple hours,
Right.
half a day. And now with the flood, it was going to be weeks because everything was down. But we're used to voices of authority and trust telling us this is what's going on and we're going to deal with it, even in Texas. Imagine a world where everything goes dark. That's what my book is about. Everything just simply goes dark.
Yeah. And do you think, I mean, obviously people who've read the book and, I'm doing my part here by having you on the show to talk about it. But do you think with the movie, maybe that will reach a wider audience in terms of awareness of this issue? Because it seems like there's not a lot of worry about this. A lot of people don't know, they don't even know what an EMP is.
Yeah, well, in my town, just about everybody's read the book, and it's kind of amusing. Every time it's a village, Black Mountain. It's very much as I described. I go down, drop in, say hello, and there's some customers. Oh, you're the guy who wrote the book. But a book is limited. I've sold well over 1 million copies. So let's say 2 or 3 million people have read it. A movie, a halfway decent movie, 30, 40, 50 million people will be exposed to it. And if 10% of them start to react to it and start to do things politically and for themselves, then it will really have served its purpose.
Yeah. What did you think about that movie? Now I forgot the name of it. It was the one on Netflix with Julia Roberts and I forget who else was in it, but it was a similar kind of idea where the power goes out and they're kind of in the middle of nowhere and all the cars stop. And then the one kid
Mhm.
has some sort of issue with he's like, I think they were like bleeding from the ears and stuff. And they thought it was some sort of radar that had made him sick. And I mean, that was a similar kind of theme that like where shit goes down and you don't know what's going on.
I never saw it. I've heard about them. I remember, what was it, Jericho. I was optioned about 8 or 10 years ago when Jericho came out, and that killed me. We were very close to greenlighting, and then the
Hmm.
studio said we don't want to do it. But I don't think anyone has very accurately showed. There's sort of like a science fiction quality to some of it. And that gets to me because EMP is not science fiction. EMP is a cold, deadly fact. I've only seen one movie that treated it correctly, and that was 35 years ago with the film Day After, remember, about nuclear war starting.
Yeah.
And the doctor's trying to get back to Kansas City, and he's on the interstate, and then an EMP pops, and all the cars stop. That's the only accurate portrayal I've seen of this issue.
Yeah, you should. I just looked it up. it was going to bug me. Leave the World Behind. That's what it was called. It was interesting. It definitely, I don't know how realistic, you would obviously know how realistic some of the stuff was in the movie, but it definitely made you think. I'm just saying, like, to raise awareness of the issue. Because I think last time I had you on, you said that you had been talking with the Trump administration about doing something about this because I think you said it was about 30 to 50 billion to make all the Faraday cages and basically prevent this from being an issue. And they were looking into it and they had a report or whatever, and then Biden won the next election and then they scrapped it and they were focusing on the green energy, but now
Throw my
Trump is
hands up in
back
the
in.
air.
What's
Yes.
that?
Throw my hands up in the air. And if we weren't live, I think I might even give a finger to somebody because that was so bloody enraging. Uh, Trump's first term, about 3 months before the election, he mandated a study by DOD, DOE, all the different agencies to do a report on what is EMP, how does it work, how does it impact us, how do we respond to it, what needs to be done. The report was supposed to come in around April, 3 months after the election. Biden came in, and on day one, he killed it. He killed
Oh,
it. He actually killed it. And then we spent $1 trillion on so-called green energy, which was just a giant boondoggle. Or if he had taken 5% of that money and spent it on true infrastructure protection, that would have been doing something. So we now have Trump second time around. A key thing there is Golden Dome, which I'm incredibly happy about. I'm not sure what they're doing with EMP protection, but I do know from the Trump admin, well, from some people working there, that that's going to go forward as well.
so would the Golden Dome potentially protect from an EMP, or because couldn't somebody bring an EMP? How does it how like the logistics of actually launching one, would it have to be from another, like a boat or something? Could someone bring in a suitcase with an EMP?
No. Okay. EMP primer for 1 minute. EMP is created by launching on an ICBM, or even medium range ballistic missile, launching a nuclear weapon into space. It has to be out there about 200 miles because when the weapon blows, the gamma ray burst, and the gamma ray burst in particular starts cascading down to the Earth's surface, setting up electrons separating like a giant electro machine. That when this all hits the Earth's surface at the speed of light, the overload feeds into the electrical grid. What happens then is the millions of miles of wiring we have become antenna, feeds it into the grid, and when it hits into the high tension lines, that's a real vulnerability. The high tension lines literally blow off the pylons. I can remember watching a film with a group of people. It's been 15 years now, where they did a test on that, firing an EMP at a high tension line, and the thing literally exploded off the pylon. So all that goes down, the generating systems go down. When the Soviets did a test in 1962, Soviet test 184, it blew out a power station 500 miles away from the point of impact. Well, from the impact in space. Setting a nuclear weapon off on the ground won't do it. It sets out a very small EMP, but the further out you get, particularly get to space, the burst becomes far more significant. So the days of mutual assured destruction, of firing hundreds of missiles at each other, that's the past. Using an EMP, you cripple the civilian infrastructure in the first seconds, and no matter what they do, they can't recover. It just is not recoverable. And according to two congressional studies, it's estimated that 80 to 90% of the population would die in the year after such an event.
And then, yeah, I think we talked about it too last time, how it would take about 5 years to rebuild. And then even then you'd only have about 20% of the power.
Yeah. But then the population is down 80%, so maybe it
True.
doesn't matter at that point. Yeah, but that's pretty grim statistics.
Yeah, it really is. And most people are not prepared. And I think we talked too last time about how, well, what if you live on a farm but even like a well, a lot of those things use electricity to pump the water and stuff. And so and then a lot of the rivers and lakes would be polluted without the electrical pumps and things and filters and all that sort of thing. So a lot of stuff would just go haywire. It would be really, and then also if you had a farm and you had food and water, now you got to protect against all these other people who are coming in trying to survive.
Yeah, how long is that farm on its own going to survive? Not long. Because I think everybody has in their head this thought that, well, if the crap hits the fan, I'll just go out to the countryside. I know there's plenty of food out there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You're expecting the farmers are a bunch of granola eating. Oh, take my food, take all of it. It ain't going to be that way. And even if you got out there and you found a farm that was abandoned, do you know how to harness a horse? Do you know how to plow a field? Do you even know how to milk a cow? You know, very few of us do anymore.
I don't.
lived on a farm. Well, I lived on a farm for about 9 months up in Pennsylvania. I tell you, it was hard ass work, you know, from 5 or 6 in the morning, particularly in the summer when you're haying and everything. I can't imagine myself doing that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I used to work in education for 17 years. I worked in schools in Washington State and Arizona. And it seems like there's a lot of things that we teach that are kind of worthless. Like, do you think that that's something that we should do to prepare for something like this, whether it's an EMP or some other sort of disaster that causes us to kind of go back to the basics? Like, should we teach kids survival skills, farming, how to take care of themselves? Like, some of these basic survival skills, because I feel like, yeah, a majority of us would just not know what to do.
What did you do in education?
I was a counselor.
Oh, okay. All right. You must have seen, so you're dealing with kids every day trying to advise them and everything else, and their fundamental knowledge just simply isn't there. So my response to you first of all would be the Boy Scouts of America. By the age of 11, I'm in the Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts. I became an Eagle Scout. I learned basic survival skills, very basic things that most people don't know. How to purify water, how to, camp, do things like that. The Boy Scouts is a good place to start. And yeah, I think some fundamental education on survival, say in the Boy Scout setting or whatever, would be a heck of a boon, you know? I can remember going camping with some people, and they stupidly drank water straight out of a creek. And I found out, I said, "What the hell are you guys doing? Are you crazy?" "Well, the water's running." And sure enough, the following morning, they were all crapping their guts out. And I was like, now you've learned your lesson. It's just basic things like that. In a real world scenario, that could kill them,
Yeah, because
So
you probably follow this even more than I do, but I've been really interested in just other countries, other governments, other systems, because there's all this talk of different things like bringing some of these other systems to America. So I like to look at other countries. Doesn't China, don't they teach some of those things? Well, I can't remember if it was China or some other country. The kids were like learning how to shoot guns like in school. Like this was part of their training as a student, was like target practice.
yeah, I'm not sure if that was China or not. I know in Mongolia it's that way. I've spent 4 summers in Mongolia, well, 3 summers and 1 autumn, and those kids knew how to survive.
Yeah.
Once summer let out, those kids went back to their families out in the steppe, and it was amazing everything those kids could do and knew how to do. We're such a pampered society, we don't know. An analogy I give is, let's say you took a Civil War regiment, which was the basis of some of my novels, and you put it all, starting afresh on a different planet. They would know things. They would know how to farm. They would know how to mine. They would know so many different things. They could survive. Now, take a plane load of people, 400 people, they crash land on some remote island. How many of them would actually know what to do?
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. Yeah, there's a lot of just basic things that even me myself, I don't know how to do everything. I like to camp and things. I know some basic things, but I don't know. I mean, filtering water and stuff, I'm not sure I'd be able to figure that out just without the tools and things.
Exactly. How to dress a deer, I did it once. I never want to do it again. you know?
Right? Yeah, but if you have to survive, it becomes the thing where you can't Google it. If there's no electricity, you can't look it up. You can't ask Chat GPT, right? You got to
Yeah,
have a
yeah,
paper
yeah,
book.
yeah. You can stare at the darkened screen. So,
I mean, it really makes you think too, just like as I said, as I was a counselor, I mean, when I started in the schools, maybe a handful of kids had a cell phone, right? And then when I left, every kid had a cell phone. And just the psychological impact of kids not being on their phones so much and then having that completely gone, like they might psychologically just completely disintegrate without having that technology they're so used to. Forget like how having to survive off food and water. Like psychologically, I feel like they'd almost just go crazy.
well, each layer that's added to a technological society, 100 years ago, the layer that was being added was electrification. Cities were electrified. The countryside was not. But once they became electrified, some basic knowledge starts to slip away. 120 years ago, out in the countryside, everybody had a horse, you know? They knew how to take care of it. By 1920, 1 out of 10 Americans had an automobile in their house, well, with their house. So as they gain new technologies, they forget the old technologies. And so it's been, all the way through to today with chat GBT and internet and all that. And the kids therefore have forgotten how to do things previously, going back to the fundamentals.
Yeah. Do you think, in terms of, because if you look at like the Industrial Revolution, I mean, there's a lot of things like, oh, we're going to lose all these jobs and things. And now you got the AI revolution coming. Do you think we're ready for this, or are we totally unprepared? I mean, forget if the electricity goes out. What if it doesn't? That's almost scarier. Like with the AI stuff, I mean, there's going to be a lot of job loss, right?
Ultimately not. Uh,
Hmm.
I can remember in the 70s and 80s, Toffler's book, The Third Wave, which was almost like a Bible, what lose older jobs. So some very incredibly high percentage of our society today, their jobs are based on computer technology. So it created more jobs than we lost. I'd like to think the same thing's going to happen this time. Because I remember doomsayers back in the 70s. Oh, we're going to become a society where we're all slaves to the computer and the computer does everything and we just sit there and consume. Well, that's not been the case.
So okay, so you're talking about okay from the 70s and 80s. Is there other parallels in history to the times today in terms of technology when technology changed?
Just a second. Okay. All right. I love you too.
What's your
She
dog's
likes,
name?
this is Chloe. She likes to crash meetings. I start talking on the computer and she has to come out and see who I'm talking to.
Gotcha.
That's
Hi,
our dog.
Chloe.
Chloe, say hi. What was your question again?
Just in terms of parallels of what we're seeing now with technology and the shift from basic computers to AI and robots taking more jobs, but like you said, maybe there's going to be a creation of other things. So besides the Industrial Revolution, was there other times where there was a big shift in technology in history?
Hmm. Well, of course, the big one is the Industrial Revolution starting in the 18th century and initially created a lot of dislocation because the mills replaced much of the labor, particularly cloth weaving and all that. And there was even a movement called the Luddites. These were people who destroyed the mills, saying it was taking jobs. But ultimately, it creates more jobs. I can't answer that question well. The Roman Empire at its peak, and then they lose a lot of the technologies they knew about. I really can't answer that question.
Well, what about other similarities and just in terms of general where we're at today and with the Roman Empire and the fall of the Roman Empire? Do you think that that's similar to what we're going through now with the U.S.? Because I think what is the math? I think it's like most empires only last about 250 years, and I
Hmm.
think we're getting pretty close to that time. Do you think there's some similarities there? Or is that a stretch?
No, that's something, of course, I worry about. I mean, my majors in my graduate program were military history and the history of technology. And I can recall a really good assignment from one of my professors where I read a book published in 1859 and was a report to Parliament about American industrialization. This was a group of guys who came to America in 1857 and spent 2 years studying our systems. And they wrote the report. It was read into by Parliament. I actually got to hold a copy of the report and read it thoroughly. And they were basically saying the Americans are going to beat us. They're absolutely going to beat us because, first of all, their colleges, all our colleges are classical based. All right, for the elite only. The Americans, they're opening colleges for working people, and they're talking about technology and farming and things like that in their colleges. The social stratas in English society prevented people from moving from lower class to middle and upper. So all these things together, they were saying by the year 1900, the Americans are going to swamp us. And we did. It became the American century with our industrialization. So the big question now is, will China beat us in the 21st century?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I'm fundamentally optimistic about America, particularly now. I mean, so many things have changed in the last 6 months. And so it's obvious who I believe is doing some of this. Uh, we have to, as Abraham Lincoln once said, we must disenthrall ourselves and then we will save our country. As our case is new, we must act anew and think anew. Again, from Lincoln. So we have to think better. You know,
Yeah, well, and I think that is interesting. In terms of the technology is one thing, but then it goes back to the basic things and another. And I don't know if you ever saw that movie Blackfish, but I had the director on my show, and she made another movie called The Grab. and it was all about all these countries coming in and grabbing up land for farming and grabbing up water. And it was really interesting to see how much China has come in and grabbed farmland from the U.S. and grabbed water. And I think Russia has done it too, and maybe Iran or some Middle Eastern countries have come in and grabbed all these things. So it's kind of like there's almost like this race to get as much farmland and water. It used to be oil, right? That was the resource that everyone was going after. I'm sure that's still valuable too, but also now people are saying, oh, farmland and food and water are very valuable commodities. We want to get as much of this as possible.
You know, China, I'm in a minority. I don't worry about China all that much because there's a number of things about China. The Chinese are only 1 year's harvest away from a big disaster. All you need is one lean year and their production of food. They can't feed their people.
Right. I think that's why they're buying a bunch of farmland here.
But it still is inside America. If need be, we will buy it back or confiscate it. I don't think that's going to be the situation. 1/3 of China is still in 19th and 20th century technology. You get 100, 200 miles out the eastern belt of China, meaning the coast inland for a couple hundred miles. That's 21st century stuff, high-speed trains and all that. When you get into the outback, they got a population of several hundred million that they have to worry about. That these people can be rather rebellious if need be. So if they lose their food supply for 1 year, they're gone. Secondly, the male to female ratio in China for our, not my generation anymore, the Gen Zs, the 20, 30-year-olds, well, they were children that were born at a time when China had a one-child policy. So tens of millions of future parents, when they found out they were going to have a daughter, they aborted it. They wanted a male. So the male-female ratio is off. That's going to create, it's called empty branches. That can be problems. So there's a number of problems lurking just below the surface. So remember, 30 years ago, the prediction was Japan was going to outrace us. The Japanese economy in the 1980s, it was so far ahead we would never catch up to them. Where's Japan today? It's more blunt, you know?
Yeah.
Their population is actually flatlining and going down. And they're going to have a very serious problem in a couple of years of who's going to support such an aging population. There's not enough workers to do it.
That's interesting.
So the same thing with us. We could screw up over the next 5 to 10 years. These are very, very crucial years right now. But another key thing for me is re-industrializing America. Right now, and I think we talked about it last time we were together, all the electrical components that we have, the big stuff, the transformer.
Right. From the 70s and stuff, right?
Yeah, it's from the 70s and it's made in China now. We have to bring that industrial base back to America.
Yeah, that is one thing I do. Love him or hate him about Trump when he talks about building more things here. It's kind of a prepping mentality for that, because if something does go wrong, then China has us by the balls. They could just be like, oh, we're not going to give you that stuff.
Right.
Have fun,
Right.
What do you do?
Exactly. And that's why I'm thrilled with obviously I'm pro-Trump. All right. I'm really pro-Trump. But we have to, the analogy, I think I gave it when I was with you last time. The analogy I give is it's December 8th, 1941. The president sits down with his Joint Chiefs, his key generals and admirals. And the Chief Admiral King stands up and says, Mr. President, we got a problem. All our aircraft carriers are made in Japan. And then the key Army guy, Marshall, stands up, sir, we got a problem. All our tanks, all our airplanes are made in Germany. What the hell are we going to do now? Well,
I didn't even know that. That's really fascinating. What did they do?
Well, that's what the analogy is. Because
what's an analogy? Okay.
Yeah, because starting in 1940, thank God we did it. In 1940, we suddenly really kicked loose with industrialization because only about 50% of our industrial capability was working at that moment. The rest was quiet. Well, within a year, that industrial base was humming, producing all the tools of war we would need. And, we don't realize it. From the day the war started for us until it ended was only 44 months. 44 months. By the last year of the war, we were making over 100,000 airplanes a year. Before the war started, we were making 5,000 a year. Think of that massive industrialization. We did it before and we can do it again type mentality. We should start now on re-industrializing. And I think that is starting to happen. What was it Trump said yesterday or the day before? There's $15 trillion of investments in infrastructure are coming back into our country. So that's really important for us. We have to reinvent industrialization in America to make it work.
Yeah, no, I think that is so important. It's something that doesn't get talked about. And I know Biden had the Build Back Better, but I feel like that didn't include a lot of the stuff, the infrastructure with the grid and all that, those kinds of things. And I don't think it was enough. And in some ways it was too much. It was too much money. I don't know where the money went. I haven't seen a lot of results from that, but it's a great idea to rebuild the infrastructure, especially like you said, the electricity, especially because we're going to be so reliant on that moving forward with AI and all this electronic stuff. If we don't have electricity, none of it works.
Well, I can remember, Biden had been in office some months and they dedicated something like 10 or 20 billion dollars. We're going to make 5,000 EV chargers across America.
Oh yeah, did they only make like 5 or something?
Yeah, exactly. So that comes out to about $1 billion or two per charger. Where the hell did the rest of the money go? Where did it go? While private enterprise, Tesla, now has like 5,000 or 6,000 charging stations across the country, all of it through private enterprise. So that was that was one of the big ones. Where the hell did the money go for the charging stations? Oh, all the billions and billions for 100 square miles of solar collectors. They didn't build any of it. It was one of the greatest boondoggles in history. I hope they investigate that more.
Yeah. And well, another thing that I think that they didn't, that worries me is we talk about things that are made in other countries. Isn't the chips for a lot of electronics that we make made in Taiwan? And that's like one of the only countries that does it. Now we started to build, I think there's a chip factory. It's in Arizona. It's a few miles away from me, but it's not ready yet. So I don't know how soon that will be, but that'll be key, I think, moving forward to be independent.
Chip production, that's a fundamental building block. No chips, no machines, no computers, no AI. So we have to look at these points of vulnerability and do it better. But again, I'm optimistic, unless somebody does a major move now. But, what happened in Iran 2 weeks ago was a clear message to the world. Don't screw around with us.
The bunker busters?
Yes, do not screw around with us. And part of that was sending a message to China and Russia and also any third world players. We have the capability. And for the first time, we're not going to hesitate in using it.
Yeah, and the irony of that whole thing was people thought, oh God, we're starting another war, yada yada yada, and then all of a sudden it was like, boom, we got a peace deal. Now, how long does it last? Do both sides honor the peace deal? I don't know, but at least it's an attempt, and it came quickly, and I'm really happy about that. There's been a lot of peace deals recently. India and Pakistan, I think we had mentioned that in the last episode, and that there's a peace deal there because they were potentially going to use. They're both nuclear, so they could have used nukes on each other,
and they were threatening.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that could be a place where an EMP might be used, against India or Pakistan. Yeah, we have the potential of remarkable growth in the next several years. And as long as we can keep the peace, I think it's going to happen. In the same way, the way we built our industry, starting around 1939, 1940 to 42, 43, we became the powerhouse of the world. We did it well, it was under a national emergency, but we did it. I like to
Yeah.
think we're going to see some of that today.
Well, so besides other countries being an enemy or a threat to America, what about the threat from within? Because I don't know if you've read the book Mao's Revolution, or what is it called? Mao's America. I had that author on. It's really fascinating to learn. And she talks about, living through the Mao revolution and then to the latest Chinese Communist Party. And she's worried. She's seen a lot of those kinds of themes in America. So what about the threat from within, about a revolution and overthrow? I mean, you talk about the Industrial Revolution, people burning down mills. I mean, you're seeing that already. People are burning the Waymos because of the technology. I mean, these are $250,000 cars that people are lighting on fire because they don't want the technology.
I think we'll be okay. No. Uh, yeah, but America's flirted in the past with things. In the late 1930s, it flirted big time with fascism. I mean, there was close to 1 million Americans were members of the American First Party, and a hell of a lot of people were dressing up in brown shirts and marching around the place. That history's been forgotten.
Oh, I did not know about that. Who was the leader of that?
America first. And, the Nazis are okay. And Lindbergh, my God, Lindbergh gets involved in it. A funny story. My father and mother, it was 1939 or 1940. The guy in my dad's factory, dad worked in a gas making plant. Said, hey, John, we're going to have a big party on the lake this weekend. Why don't you join us? And, yeah, sure. My father, I'm German descent. And my father and mother show up and they drive in and they're looking, and all these guys are going around, in brown shirts and such. And my mother looked at my father and said, well, forget the free beer. Let's get the hell out of here. These people are Nazis. And once you know it, a week later, my father gets called into the front office at the factory, and it's a couple of FBI agents. Yeah, we got your license number, John Forstchen, and you were at this Nazi rally, but the guy said it's okay, it's all right. You immediately turned around and you left. But who invited you to this party? And my father was more than happy to give the names. This wasn't. I'm not going to report it. But I remember him telling my mother, and my mother was freaked out. She said, aren't you glad you didn't stay for the beer? Because he first said, maybe we'll stay for the beer. So
No, that's
this was
scary.
a very big movement, particularly in the New York metropolitan area. People of German descent in particular were susceptible to it. So these things have happened before, and we always seem to right the pendulum just at the right moment, you know?
So you mentioned, I mean, you're a fan of Trump. So then what is that whole, because there is a lot of things where people call him a Nazi and they're saying this is parallels and America First. You're saying that was America First back then. So explain the parallel there. Why do people, because when I see Trump, I don't see Hitler. Like, I'm not seeing him trying to he's trying to make peace deals. He goes to North Korea and he's like, hey, he tells them, instead of like worrying about the nukes, he's like, look, you should build condos on these beaches. These beaches are beautiful. Build some condos. Like, he's kind of more of a businessman mindset.
Yes. It's very, very frustrating. I mean, I'm a historian, okay? First and foremost, historian, then author. I know very clearly from my classes what Nazism is. I used to have World War II vets coming into my class. I had dozens, about 30 different vets from both sides, German and American side. And I had Holocaust survivors. Have you ever been to Dachau? I
No.
mean, I'll never forget it. I just stood there and it was so overwhelming, particularly the Jewish temple. that was built on the grounds of Dachau for commemoration after the war. And you walk into that, and if you don't start crying, there's something wrong with you. So I know what Nazism is. I mean, I'm post-war generation, but I know what Nazism is. I am enraged when people are saying Trump is a fascist. He is the furthest possible remove. That is simply rhetoric from the left that is absolutely obscene. Comparing Trump to the Holocaust? Talk to a Holocaust survivor. And I've talked with them. I had them teach my class, what they went through. It is evil. It is actually evil to say that conservative Republicans are Nazis. It's just evil.
Yeah, it's interesting to like I don't see I hear a lot of talk of the immigration and the illegal immigration and ICE, but it's interesting if I don't think I've heard any side explain because I was so curious. I was like, okay, well, what are the actual immigration laws? And if you look back and you go through it, and it's actually, I think your buddy Newt Gingrich, it was during his time they made a deal. The Democrats and the Republicans worked together because there was an illegal immigration issue. And they made all these rules and laws. And if you look at the reasons why they did it, it's to benefit the workers and because a lot of what happens with the illegal immigration is these corporations take advantage of the illegal immigration and they get the cheaper labor and they exploit these people. And then they can take advantage of them because they're like, well, you're an illegal. You don't have any rights. You can't speak up and we're not going to pay you full wages. We're not going to give you benefits and you can't do anything about it because if you do, we'll just deport you. And so if you look at the reasoning behind it, it's like, and then they allow so many visas. I mean, if the bills that they put together that Newt and Clinton put together, I mean, it makes sense. If you look at now, could you revamp it and modernize it? Sure. But I mean, the laws on the books to me seem pretty reasonable.
The laws have been there all along. I mean, throughout, except the day after Biden became president, the gates were opened. It was almost like if we open the gates, they will come. And they came by the millions. And it was obscene. It was wrong. They're being exploited. They're here illegally. I can, in a way, not blame a family for wanting to get here, but it also involved a tremendous number of males alone, hundreds of thousands.
Military age.
At military age. That's scary to me. I wrote a book, it's been 10 years now, called Day of Wrath. It's a relatively short book, 60,000 words. And it postulated, have you ever heard of the, what was it, Breslin scenario from Russia, 2005? I can't remember the exact name. There was a Russian school, the south of Russia, in 2005. Half a dozen terrorists seized the school on its opening day. They murdered 250 children. They murdered them in horrific ways, including dragging them onto the roof of the school where it could be seen, raping and then killing them. 250 children died. And this scenario can apply here. I mean, all of our situations in public schools and all of that, they've been lone wolf shooters, white male, teenage years in almost every single case. We're not prepared for what could be something far worse. 3 to 5 terrorists seizing a school, or worse yet, 10 to 15 terrorists seizing 3 different schools on the same day and killing everybody. That would cripple us. We would never really psychologically recover from it. What will happen in it? Can you imagine 500 or 1,000 children slaughtered in a day? Well, that's what my book was about. And that was the warning. We have to think out better ways to protect our schools. And my book's actually been used as a training manual now in a number of different schools. How we have to rethink how to defend them. So things like that can upset the apple cart, can upset it in a big way. And that's one of our vulnerabilities.
Yeah, that is really a scary thing with the schools. You're right, because, and I think someone had pointed out this too, that, it's interesting when you go to the airport, you got to go through security. When you go to a concert, you have to go through security, a metal detector. And so, I mean, it's sad to say because I used to work in the schools and I liked being able to, that it felt like a safe place. But lately it doesn't. And it almost feels like you almost need that metal detector. It's not a future that I wanted to envision, but unfortunately, I feel like we're almost there where you kind of need more protection around schools because they are our children. And you're right. Like the lone wolf thing is scary enough, but if there was a group of people, then that's really scary.
Yeah. Um, I teach at a Christian college. We have about 700 students. We're small, we're up in the mountains. We have a terrible sense of security. I say terrible because the student director for all this and we have a lot of conversations and we're very, very vulnerable. So how do we prepare for it? Well, either you become a fortress or not. Do we want to be a fortress? Metal detectors everywhere, kids being patted down and all that. No, we don't. But on the other side of the coin, if our school was ever targeted, I'm frightened by it. Therefore, I believe very, very firmly in the right to arm certain teachers, not any teacher. Let's say you got 20 people volunteer to do it in a public school. Pick out the ones that are military trained, law office trained. So let's say you get 5. Part of it is you keep your damn mouth shut. You never say, if you suddenly when you're sitting in the faculty room going, oh yeah, well, I got a gun on me right now. Bullshit. You're fired on the spot. You very quietly train these people and you just have them hidden. They might be able to buy time because it becomes an unknown factor. Which teachers are armed? So that's something I believe strongly in.
Yeah.
However, if I did carry a gun into my school, I would be fired.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know the exact solution, but I do feel like we do need some backup plans for a lot of these things, a
Mhm.
lot of these, because it goes back to September 11th. Like we were caught with our pants down. We were not
Yes.
expecting something like this. And so we got to start thinking, and I think, wasn't there a government agency that is their job, is to think up these terrible things and then the plan for how we would react to it, right? Wasn't that a thing?
Yes. I mean, that's any good military system. Part of it is thinking up scenarios of what could be done. Because let's go all the way back to EMP. EMP is what they call an asymmetrical first strike weapon, meaning you launch it as a first strike. You put it up over the United States, you blow it, you wipe out the civilian infrastructure. In fact, you basically won the war in the first 5 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. We have to do the same thing with schools and a lot of other things. We have to think up scenarios to realize this might possibly happen. How do we prevent it? Imagine if on September 10th, somebody finally said, airplanes could be turned into ballistic missiles. Most likely people did say this, but they weren't taken seriously.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned that in the last episode that your dream is for people to look back in 50 years and go, "Oh, that guy was such a kook. He was so wrong." You don't want to be
Yes,
right. You don't want it to
I
happen.
don't want to be right.
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to be right. You
Yeah.
know, when I leave this planet, yeah, they'll hold a little celebration of me. Yeah, he's the guy that wrote the book that never came true, but he had a good time doing it.
Yeah.
So that's what I want out of life, and that means being better prepared.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, the book is out now. It's been out, and then the movie will be coming this it's starting September, so you think it'll be out.
Well, we're starting shooting around September 15th, and we're going to wrap at the end of October. And we're looking at late spring, early summer for release as a mainstream, in the theater movie.
Okay. I'm excited. I can't wait to see
Well,
it.
you're excited.
Yeah. No, I know it's your dream. It's amazing that, and then maybe sequels too, because there's the books have sequels, so they can make movie sequels.
Oh yeah, from your lips to God's ear. Yeah, if the movie goes well, then we've already said if it goes well, we'll do a seasonal thing. Next one would be 6 or 8 episodes on book 2. And if that goes well, and then I'm going to be sitting there talking with my accountant on how to hide the money. And but the message, the key thing there is the message will keep getting reinforced and across. We have to build a Golden Dome. We definitely have to do that. We have to upgrade our infrastructure that it could survive a strike. And that can be done. Maybe not the whole infrastructure, but at least what I call lifelines of survival and rebuilding. 1 or 2 power lines radiating out from Charlotte to up here would be a way for these communities around it to start to rebuild. So these are the things I'm hoping for.
Yeah. Well, I hope the movie, maybe that'll be big enough to send that message and people will take it seriously.
Yeah. It's kind of funny to think that I'm going to have a movie.
Well, congratulations. I'm excited to see it. And you'll have to come back when the movie comes out. We could promote it again.
You know, I feel very blessed, very, very blessed that God put me here, put me in the small college where I definitely needed to be and wanted to be. I got to raise my daughter in this community. I just feel very blessed. So thank you, Lord, for the blessings I have and that on my family.
Yeah, I love to hear. Well, that's great. Sounds like you're in a great place and good things are happening. I'm happy for you.
Thank you very much.
All right. We'll stay in touch. Thank you.
Okay. Live long and prosper. I'll hold it.
There you go.
Live long and prosper. Okay?
All right. You too. Okay.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
One of a kind, from the rockers to the wise men.